Welcome to the My Tennis Coaching Podcast, your go-to resource for all things tennis coaching. Your host is Steve Whelan. Here, we dive deep into ecological dynamics and constraint-led coaching practices. Whether you're a seasoned coach or just starting out, this podcast is designed to build your confidence, expand your knowledge, and refine your techniques. Join me as we challenge traditional methods, explore player-centered approaches, and transform your coaching experience. Let's take your coaching game to the next level together. Stay tuned for insightful discussions and practical tips that will make a real difference on and off the court.
More dead bodies than alive bodies. Welcome, as always, to the My Tennis Coaching Podcast. And unfortunately, today we are audio only. As you probably guessed from my voice, I am full of cold, not feeling my best. So I'm actually cozied up at home. I'm recording into my microphone today. And yes, the whole concept of survivorship bias in tennis, and the whole concept of survivorship bias in tennis. And it's quite a tendency to look at the best players and look at the methods or their coaching programs and assume that that's the reason why they're so good. And I've done quite a few posts recently over on LinkedIn. Please follow me over there because I post sort of little mini articles every single day. So if you're interested in some of the stuff that I put out, please feel free to add me as a connection over on LinkedIn. But I've put quite a few articles about this out recently, about why we assume that coaches play a huge role in successful players. And it only really happens in tennis, I think. Like, I don't believe we know who Wayne Rooney's under 10 coach was. I don't think we know who Usain Bolt's coach was. I don't think we know who the coach is for the current Olympic rowing team. Like, we just assume in tennis that, especially in talent developments or player developments, that the coach is the reason why the player's so good. And it's crazy because, like, obviously the coach has a influence. The coach plays a really important part in player development. I'm not taking that away from coaches. However, I would probably weight more credibility or more praise to the player themselves first and foremost. Like, the player has to put in, as Sean Dyche would say at Everton, the hard yards. The player has to perform day in, day out. They have to perform under stress and anxiety in competition. They've got to put in the motivation and the work. They've got to get up early and make sure they're eating the right foods. They have to do all that stuff. Like, the coach just has to make sure that they guide them towards more and better decisions on the tennis court, or more and better decisions lifestyle-wise. Like, the player has to put so much in. So they should get the bulk of the credit for the success. But it doesn't happen in tennis. It's always like, oh, the player wins nationals, well done to the coach. It's like, how does that make any sense? And for me, that's just part of ego. Like, it's just feeding the ego. And especially if you're a national governing body, like, you want your performance centres to look like you're successful. You want to justify what you're doing. And that's where the survivorship bias comes in. So if you're not too sure what survivorship bias is, it's where we look at the ones who survive, the ones who make it through the system. So, for example, the national level, the national champions, because we just had national champs recently here in the UK. So you look at national champions, you go, oh my God, they're so good. Where are they training? What's their program like? And we have this mentality of, well, let's copy that because that must work. That's working. Look, it's working. Centre X is producing 7, 8 players of a high standard. They must have the secret sauce. And we just think because players get through the system, they survive, that it's because of the system. What we don't look at is the dead bodies in a metaphor type of way. We don't look at the players who don't make it For every player who makes it, there's probably 50 who don't, who are doing the exact same program, the exact same number of hours, having the exact same coaching, and they don't make it. I was having this conversation last night with a coach as well, because they're going through quite a tricky time at the moment where one of their players is doing well and then another coach is trying to encourage them, poach them across to their centre. And again, they'll put out their qualifications and the fact that they've got certain accreditation at the centre from a national governing body point of view. And I said to them last night, like, well, okay, have they produced any players? And there might be one or two that get through the system. But how many players are they currently working with? Again, we just look at the top 1% and we think that's what works. And we always associate it with the coach. We don't see the dead bodies. We don't see the thousands of players that coaches work with who don't get anywhere near that standard. We just look at the top 1%. And my sort of quote on this for years to all tennis coaches is, you're only as good as your less experienced player. That's a true reflection of you. Not the survivors at the top, but the ones down the bottom. Because that's where true coaching happens. Sometimes you just get lucky with a player, and the player is just really talented and they're really motivated and driven, and they put in the hard yards, like I mentioned before, and they get success. But your grassroots stuff, that's where the true reflection of your coaching comes in. Because if you can turn a diamond out the rough kind of thing, then that's where you show your true value. And when we look at survivorship bias, like what we tend to do, and especially from a player pathway point of view, is we'll look at, I don't know, a Raducanu, because she's one of the recent ones that come through. We look at her under 8, under 9, under 10, under 12, 14, 16 journey, and we're like, oh, that's it. She's won a Grand Slam at a very young age. She came through this system. Let's copy that. Let's just do that again. Because look, it works. It works, look. And it's the justification for the probably millions of money or pounds spent on producing these systems. And like, especially in the UK, we've invested a lot on external coaches from Belgium, from America. We've ripped up and copy and pasted programs for years. And then we've had some Grand Slam success recently. We've had Andy, obviously very successful. Emma, then we've had lots of success in the doubles. It's like, yeah, this is our system and it works. And then they use that to, when they go out and do talent identification and whatever you want to call it these days, look, this works, this pathway works. And when you're a parent and you're presented with this, you go, yeah, it does work. Surely, because look, they've got so much success. And what they don't see is the dead bodies. They don't see the thousands and thousands of players who have gone through the system and it's just spat them out. And they've been told, like, you're not good enough at 9. You're not good enough at 10. And we've just gone through a series of regional camps here where our best under 9s, under 10s, they go off to a camp with the best players in the region and they get little reports back. And we've just had an issue with a coach that I'm working with where they've had a report come back and it's not very good. The report says they need to work on all these technical things. And they're making sort of snapshots and judgments of players who are 9, again, pre-puberty, haven't even gone through puberty yet, haven't even gone through any stage of maturity. They haven't grown into what will hopefully be their adult form or start to grow into their adult form. And you're making snapshots judged on that. You're making snapshots judged on under 9s. And I guarantee now, if you go to any under 8, under 9, under 10, under 12 program, your best players will be the ones who are more physically developed because they have a huge personal player advantage constraint. They're just bigger, stronger, faster. They may be more psychologically mature as well. They're better problem-solving decision makers. The other kids in the age group are just immature. They're still growing. And we're making snapshot judged on that. It just makes no sense. And again, what tends to happen is people get written off at 9 and 10, and then it's like, well, I'll go and try something else because I'm not going to make it as a tennis player. I've been told so. And the evidence is there. Like, even those national champions now recently at under 12s and under 10s, there's absolutely zero guarantee they're going to be a pro player. The odds are still massively stacked against them that they'll even be a pro player, that they'll make any living from tennis. Again, the stats, I've not got them in front of me, but it's less than 1% to be a pro player, top 100 player. And that's the danger of survivorship bias, because we just use it as a justification. We use it as, well, if it worked for them, it must work. If that coach has got success with that player, then they know what they're doing. And you see this all the time within tennis. Like, a coach will win a couple of national titles, say, and then they've got the secret sauce. Then all of a sudden they're now an under 10, under 11 national coach. Because you've got the secret sauce, you've done it. No thought of, well, maybe you just got lucky. Maybe you were in the right place at the right time, and you just so happened to come across a player who had that little bit of an edge. They were a little bit different. Maybe you just happened to, again, the Belgians are a great example of this. The Belgians, when they had all their success with Kleisters and Hennin and Melis, like, everyone think the Belgium had the right answer. And everyone copied their program, including here in the UK. And we hired Steve Martins and a lot of the Belgium coaches because, oh my God, they've got it. They've sussed it out. And what we found out quite quickly was, oh no, they just got really lucky. They just got really lucky that they had a golden generation of talent come through at the same time. It wasn't really, again, just not taking any away from the Belgians here, but it wasn't because they had these great ideas and things in place. Obviously, one thing we've not talked about here is environment. Like, did the Belgians just create a great learning ecosystem? It wasn't so much the tactical coaching, but was it just a great environment to grow up in? Because you had some really talented players who spurred each other on. And I think even if you look at the pro game and we look at Djokovic, Murray, Nadal and Federer, we've had a golden generation there, because all four of those players have pushed each other on to get even better. And that's, again, I'm being quite cautious. That's not saying that you should go with the best players and that's going to help you. But again, the Belgium system, I wouldn't say just they got lucky, but they had a sense of degree of, they had a couple of players come through at the right time. And then we copied the system here in the UK, and very quickly we realised that it didn't work for us. It didn't work in our ecosystem. It didn't work in our culture and our environment. There's elements of it that we've kept in. Obviously, sort of mini tennis or LTA youth tennis, tennis tens, that element is still there. It's still there, and I think it does have a huge benefit in terms of participation and using it as a constraint-led approach as well. I think there's huge benefits for the system, so I'm not saying that it's all bad. But we just got to be careful. And we do this a lot, even within our clubs. Like, we may have one player who goes on to, I don't know, even a county level. If you're working at a small club, they go on to a county level and you think, well, that's worked with them. I'll just do the same with everyone else. I'll just copy and paste their program. We got into this conversation with a coach forum this week, like, well, to reach a county level, you have to play X number of hours a week, or to reach a regional level, X number of hours a week. And again, there's no evidence to suggest that. Again, you're just using the survivorship bias of, well, if they played 4 hours a week, then we must play 4 hours a week. And you get this a lot with parents, don't you? Like, parents thinking, well, oh my God, they're number one in the region. They're doing 27 individuals a week. Oh, we should be doing 27. Which is just, again, that's a really a over-exaggeration example. But that's how parents think. And that's how coaches think sometimes as well. Oh, they're doing 4 hours a week strength and conditioning. We must do 4 hours. So what can we look past? Like, how can we not fall into the survivorship bias trap? I think first of all, foremost, like everyone's different. Like we've just got to look at players as individuals. We've just got to coach what's in front of us. We have to stop coaching from textbooks. We have to stop coaching from Instagram and copy and pasting stuff. We've really got to think about, okay, what's the player in front of me? What do they have today that I can almost guide into making a little bit better today? And just getting those little improvements each and every session. And that might mean increasing hours. That might mean increasing the type of training they're doing. But we can't just copy and paste it across and sort of say, well, that's what they're doing, so we must do it. We've got to treat everyone as individuals. Some players might need 4 hours a week. Some players might just need 2. Again, it's looking at the person in front of you. We've then also got to make sure that we are creating representative training environments. So are we using methods that encourage players to make decisions, to adapt to different situations, to develop resilience? Or are we just trying to replicate techniques? Are we just trying to copy and paste stuff that we see other players do? Are we designing training environments for that individual? Or are we just watching a video on YouTube and just copying the practice and hoping it works for our players? So when we create these training environments, ecosystems, it's based on what the players want and need in the moment. It's not based on anyone else's. Then look at the unsuccessful stories. Then look at the dead bodies. Like, understand why players leave the sport. Burnout, too much pressure, too much too soon, felt like a full-time job. These are just some conversations I've had with players over the years. And that's where we need to look at it, because like if they're saying to us that it feels like a job, they're probably doing too much. If we feel like there's too much, if they feel there's too much pressure on them, we're probably putting that pressure on them as a coach or as a parent. So we need to look at the dead bodies. We need to do more biopsies on the dead bodies and realise where we're getting it wrong, and not just looking at the survivors, not just looking at the top 1% who've made it and thinking that's how it works. It's looking at what we're not good at and trying to make that a little bit better as well. And then we just have to look past traditional methods. We have to look forwards. We have to look at methods like the constraint-led approach. We have to look at things like ecological psychology and ecological dynamics. We have to look at research and evidence-based stuff. We can't just look at what worked for Carlos Alcaraz, for example. We can't just copy and paste. We have to look at different systems. And again, a big pushback for tennis coaches when I present and I talk about ecological dynamics and ecological psychology and constraint-led approach and stuff like that. A big pushback I get from coaches, it's worked for me in the past. It's always worked for me. And that's the survivorship bias. Yeah, it's worked for your 1%, but it's not worked for 99%. So the odds tell me it probably doesn't work just because it worked for one player. And it might have worked despite the coaching. The player might just have found a way of adapting based on your poor coaching and my poor coaching. And I've always thought this as well. And I've said it a few times on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. Like, if I've coached 1,000 players and only 10% have made it, then I've not coached very well. And I look at that now, okay, in terms of, well, how many players are still playing in 20 years? Or will be playing in 20 years? How many players how many of my players are playing matches? How many players are playing tennis? Not the success. I'm not looking at wins. I'm not looking at ratings and rankings. I'm not looking at who's getting into grade 2s or who's getting national selections. Because I'm not looking at the top 10% no more. I'm looking at the whole ecosystem, the whole 100%. And I need to get my percentage up. It's not just about the wins. So there you go. Hopefully you found this podcast interesting. And yet try not to fall into the trap of survivorship bias. It is all around us. It's something I'm quite conscious of as well. Because even when I get success with constraint-led approach, like, there is a survivorship bias there. Like, and what's good about the constraint-led approach is I am now seeing more players play more often, playing longer, playing competitive tennis. And for me, it's more than 1 or 10% now. It's a lot higher. If you are interested in making your practices more realistic and bridging the gap between the practice court and the match court, please check out my brand new online course, From Drills to Skills. I'll leave a link down below. If you listen on Spotify, do me a huge favor. Please follow the podcast. If you do enjoy the podcast or did enjoy the podcast, please consider leaving a 5-star review as well. Spotify is really difficult to get out and into other coaches' ears because it's such a competitive market these days, podcasting. So any likes, any comments, any 5-star reviews just really help the algorithm push it out. So if you do enjoy these My Tennis Coaching podcasts, please help. Share it with your coaching teams, share it with your coaches, share it with your players, share it with your parents. The more people who are listening to this stuff, hopefully we can start to rethink how we coach tennis and make it a little bit better. Until next week, hopefully it'll be a video-based podcast as well. Enjoy your week, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you for tuning in to the My Tennis Coaching Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an update. Your support helps us bring more insightful discussions and valuable tips to enhancing your coaching journey. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at My Tennis Coaching for daily inspiration, coaching advice, and behind-the-scenes content. Stay connected, stay inspired, and keep pushing the boundaries of your coaching skills. Until next time, keep fostering growth, innovation, and excellence on and off the court. See you in the next episode.